sure that would be billions, but anyway.
Million.
The default image on the first iPhone, which was dropped from Apple's mobile operating system only in 2012 to the dismay of many. That's one of mine, he says. As it turns out, much of what one might assume about this beautiful image is not true. It wasn't commissioned or paid for by Apple. It isn't actually a photograph of Earth, and the blackness surrounding it, well, that's not space either. But the story behind the much-admired image that introduced the world to the iPhone, known as the Blue Marble, is worth telling in its own right. Simmons, a data visualizer and designer at NASA's Earth Observatory, created this image in 2002. He told Quartz it's not a photograph, but a sophisticated visualization. Images of the Earth may seem commonplace, but there are actually very few pictures of the entire planet. The problem, Simmons said, is all the NASA Earth-observing satellites are in low Earth or geostationary orbit, meaning none of them are far enough away to see a full hemisphere. The most familiar pictures of the entire Earth are from the 1960s and 70s, the Apollo missions to the Moon. As realistic as it looks, the image is a composite of months' worth of light data collected in 1,429-mile wide bands as NASA's Terra satellite orbited from pole to pole and the Earth rotated beneath it. That data was then stitched together and applied to the surface of a digital ball, then modified in Photoshop. I'm going to give you this image link here for those in the chat. For those in the chat. There you go. Enjoy that. I'll continue. Simmons readily admits there are numerous fakeries in this image. The atmosphere is Photoshop blur. Some of the clouds are collaged together using Photoshop's clone tool to cover gaps in satellite coverage. The black area around the Earth is not the void of space. It is simply a background of black color that Simmons placed the Earth on top of. This is standard practice, Simmons says. Most actual photographs of the Earth, including the Apollo images, present the planet on a black background. Without these alterations, the image wouldn't look very Earth-like, Simmons said. He based his manipulations on reality, in the sense that I've looked at a lot of imagery to see how thick it should be, how blue that should be, but he later added, it's more hyper-realistic than realistic. Simmons and his colleagues at NASA at the time, Reto Stockley, created the iconic image that ended up on the iPhone in part to undercut what he saw as undeserving operators profiting in the market space of space imagery, he told Quartz. At the time, he recalled similar falsely colored images rendered from older black and white NASA data were selling for up to $10,000. Simmons and Stockley's image, as a work created by the U.S. government employees, was in the public domain, free for anyone to use, and for any purpose without restriction. Simmons posted it on the NASA website and didn't think much more of it. Then 5 years later, Simmons, a self-described Apple fanboy, bought the first iPhone the day after it came out. When he first turned it on, he screamed with excitement and surprise. The image that he had created, collected by a satellite, collaged on a Mac, then given away for free, was staring back at him. It says, correction, March 27th. An earlier version of this story mistakenly said that the image was a composite of 2 days' worth of data. It was actually 4 months with 2 days for the clouds. It has to be. But it has to be photoshopped. So, and if people want to just accept that, the data visualizer, but yet there's a robot on Mars. There is a Juno probe going around Jupiter. There is Cassini going around Saturn, flying through its rings. There's a Voyager spacecraft 13 billion miles from the Earth, still communicating through the, he basically set up Wi-Fi stations as he went, so that he could communicate to bounce, skip.
Uh-huh.
It's such nonsense. It's such make-believe dribble. And as a people, we should call them to the front lines, call NASA out, make them prove things. I mean, I've said this before, but again, they tell us that asteroids could hit the Earth, the meteor could hit the Earth, anything could happen at any time, right? We could get wiped out, the human race.
Mm-hmm.
If, let's put ourselves in the world 3 years ago where we had no idea about flat Earth.
Okay.
We just believe in the globe and everything. Mm-hmm. If a meteor came and took out humanity, it would be completely and totally 100% the fault of NASA. Because they can go to the moon easily.
Yeah.
They did it easily. So why would you have these societies set up to watch for asteroids and watch for meteors And you have these symposiums, these get-togethers, these meetings, these all this talk and papers written about this, but you never put a base on the moon. Why would 50 years later you don't have 40 people that live on the moon to make sure that our race isn't taken out? I mean, you would be able to continue it as long as you have people living on the moon.
Yep.
You can go there. You went there to play golf. You went there to take core samples and to knock over experiments and to take pictures and drop hammers and feathers.
Yep.
But then you just didn't go back. You get $53 million a day, and you can't go back. Doesn't make any sense. Unless you look at the actual reality of the situation, which is
you can't go
to the moon. Exactly as Van Allen said when he was laughing at these guys, saying they will never get out of Earth orbit. They will never get out of Earth orbit. They can't go anywhere. And sure enough, they discover these Van Allen belts, and then they tell Van Allen, "Be quiet.
We're going right through them.
We're going right through them." Nope, we didn't go through. We never went through them. Oh, they exist between 1,000 or 1,000 miles, and then we went right through them. Never noticed a thing. Well, actually, now listen here. Close your eyes.
And just focus. Just pay attention.
We see these little things. I might explain Buzz's behavior of late. If you haven't seen him standing behind Trump during some speech where he's making these faces, it's hilarious.